the AFP, it seems like the problem is strategic as well. In the last decade, you had 12 men sitting in General Abad's position, 12 chiefs of staff, and President Aquino has appointed 2 before his first year is even over. In something like that, and again, I only know a little about running a large organization, not as large as the AFP, but I know that in my first 3 years, it took us 3 years to start to even revamp the system, and it took 6 years for people to, inside our organization, to begin to understand what the new system is. How do you do this long term? You know, going beyond General Oban's term, how do you keep that focus, since the civilians will have to maintain oversight?
Well, that's what many people don't realize when they elected a new administration. What you change is just the top. You know, the core of the bureaucracy is still there. This is the bureaucracy that was traumatized by martial law. This is the bureaucracy that was manipulated by the previous administration. So they are, you know, in fact, they're smart. The bureaucracy is smart. They just watch. And they all, you know, they use your language, you know, transparency, accountability, citizens engagement, you know, they use all of that, you know, but in their minds, they're thinking, ano kaya kataga dito mga ito? Because it's a risk. You know, when you go out there and say, ayan, huli mo yan, magnanakaw yan. You know, they will not take that chance because they know that we guys will go, but these guys who have been there for 20, 30 years will stay there. And they will suffer the brunt of whatever, you know, they're not sure about who's next, you know. So, right, it's always like guarded. Yeah, we like your ideas, but then, you know, there's a certain, you know, for them, uncertainty, hesitation, because is this for good? This sounds very good, but is this for good? You know, so, and that's why it's important for government to achieve closure on especially the symbolic cases of corruption. That's why I was telling General Oban, you know, when General Garcia was sent to jail, you cannot imagine the impact of that on the national psyche. You know, President Aquino was brought to power because people want to dream again. You know, I mean, there's no other way I can explain it, and that's why for President Aquino, it's so important to see closure on these symbolic cases. And you know, people have been telling him, hinahinay na kayo, let's move forward, let's not go back. No, but for him, unless there is closure, I don't think that trust will be restored, because we've not had closures on, you know, key events in our history which have traumatized us as a nation. And that's why the president has really been very adamant about putting a closure on these symbolic cases of corruption and abuse of official power.
What can Congress do?
Well, going back, when you were asking at how difficult it was, I think would really be very difficult given the circumstances where junior officers are thrust into, given the priorities that they have. Likewise, given the hierarchical structure, the upper class system that we've been brought up to, so it would be very, very difficult for any. Likewise, as you move up in rank, the unfortunate mentality is, I've worked my way up, I've gone through previous battles, what my seniors have enjoyed, I should enjoy it too. So I'm just waiting for my turn. So it becomes a deadly cycle of a continuing train that once you get up there, it is your turn because you've already earned such so-called privilege. But likewise, if I might add on to what else can be done, General Oban mentioned PDR. The book has said that Congress has failed to put it in a more permanent nature, that meaning legislate on it. If it requires legislation or should remain just a policy of the executive, then that we could discuss. But I see the merits in legislating PDR so that it would be at least permanent or semi-permanent with the organization. One thing we all can do is to make sure that we elect a good president come 2016. Because one basic tenet in military leadership is leadership by example. Mahalaga po na disente at matino ang susunod na Pangulo. Because President Aquino is leading by example, Secretary Abad is leading by example, General Oban is leading by example. So definitely the next president should lead by example, because I'm sure the most junior enlisted personnel is looking up. Whatever his superiors are doing, he will follow. Whether they do good, he will do good. If they do bad, he will just find his ways around the system. So it is important that 2016 that we elect a good president, matino. I won't mention that Secretary Abad and I come from the Liberal Party.
I cannot argue against electing a good president. That's exactly, for me, that's one of the problems. Now, we are weak in building institutions. And we are focused as a nation and in our culture on personalities. So we are hoping that these knights in shining armor will not fail us. But we have not institutionalized. Nababanggit nga yung Congress. Ang napakadali naman para sa Kongreso na ipasa ang isang batas na nagbibigay ng termino para sa Chief of Staff.
Yeah.
Para hindi nangyayari yung 3 buwan, 4 na buwan, o 2 buwan. And bigyan kung talaga, bigyan mo ng term na enough for him to be able to have impact.
There's legislation now waiting, right? 3
Proposed,
years.
hindi may pasa-pasa eh. And like many other proposals, that is the urgent output that they can say that is one of the products of those hearings na merong mabilis na ipinasang batas, pero wala eh. And so we are here hoping that, persons or leaders will show the example. Now, the other blow that we can pass is a Freedom of Information Act. Yun ang kailangan natin. Ngayon, I can understand, merong mga nagsasabi, paano naman yung national security issues? We can debate that. You can debate that in Congress and put parameters. Iliwanagin kung ano. Sapagkat so many crimes also have been committed in the name of national security. Now, we are not also saying national security is not important. There are also state secrets that are very important. That can, if revealed, would undoubtedly compromise the stability of a nation. So I think that should be discussed. If you come up with these two bills immediately, and then of course, I agree with Congressman Abaya here that yung i-institutionalize natin yung reform program, kung hindi, mawawala yan. Katulad din ng reorganization document, that should be publicized. Dapat malaman natin na lahat kung ano, and then we can hold our leaders according to, now, we have this book, the next thing that we can have is also the PDR para makita natin kung ano, sinusunod nyo ba yung rekomendasyon dun sa joint assessment yan. Kasi parang management audit yan nung araw eh. And yet, nalilihis tayo. I'm afraid, after the sterling performances of these leaders of today, we might be back to square one. Sorry for the peroration.
Sir, ang ginagawa namin doon, we involve various levels in the organization. We have representations also from the enlisted personnel corps. Yung cross-section ng organization from the lieutenants, from the junior officers to field grade officers, may representation during itong ginagawang force structure review, so that everybody should can air its views. Aside from this, after we have come up with the proposal, we'll have consultations also around various units in the armed forces, and before we present this to the Defense Secretary and on to the President.
General, will you hold people accountable? Will you hold, for example, the officer who is in charge of disbursement and then you find out that he did conversion? Will there be court-martials? Will you start to hold them accountable?
Yes, that's in our code of ethics, and we have as part of our moving forward, we have strengthened actually our enforcement mechanisms in the organization, like Provost Marshal General, the Office of Ethical Standards and Public Accountability. Yes, and we had capacity building because we realized konti yung subject matter experts in these particular fields.
Sir, if you need help from media to publicize these things, these are the things we would love to do stories on. Because one of the things, again, having seen this, there's a debate internally about whether or not you publicize when a man gets demoted or chastised or punished in some way. But if you're doing reform, is that necessary? We had a debate about this. Is it Pinoy or not Pinoy? Will you wind up, demoralizing that man? Yes, but will you send a good message to the organization? What's your thought on that? If you catch someone low, let's not even talk about the big fish. Do you use them as examples?
I think that's necessary. Necessary for instituting reforms. There has to be something tangible in case certain people would not follow the pledge for reforms.
Secretary Abad, this seems not just to be happening inside the military. Glenda talked a little bit about you and the judiciary today, your battle your upcoming. You said today that you would give oversight back to the Supreme Court. Is that correct?
No. We will continue to exercise that in the same manner that thankfully both the Senate and the House have been cooperating with us in the exercise of oversight function over not just the judiciary but over the whole government bureaucracy in all its three branches. The only thing that we have been insisting on insofar as our debate with the judiciary, which we believe should not be in conflict with their jealously embraced fiscal autonomy, is that we have to account for every peso that's entrusted to us. And we just want to show the public where the money is coming from and where the money is going and why it was headed that way. But just to go back to, I've noticed there are two great excuses that has kept the military from engaging the citizenry or from being transparent about the way they use funds, for example. One is the matter of contingency. When we're at war, you cannot plan. I think that's really a myth. In fact, when we looked at the cash advances that was used as an excuse for as a way of dealing with the contingencies, because up there in the front, you cannot really be that orderly and efficient. But it turned out that most of the cash advances were happening at the national headquarters, not at the battlefield. Or the matter of national security. For the longest time, it was being used to prevent the military from making a submission with respect to its roster. And now we're doing it, but there's no issue being raised about national security. I think it's important for the public to know this because they have a stake in the military. Earlier mentioned about the problem of pension. By 2016, the amount of pension funds that government is going to provide the retirees is going to be 3 billion bigger than the salaries that we're going to pay our soldiers. And it's going to grow even wider through time if we don't correct that, because that's really a crisis that's looming very closely in the horizon. And to think the AFP, the police, and the justices don't contribute to a pension fund. This is totally paid for by all of us. In fact, next year, it's going to amount to something like 53 billion pesos, you know. And so you have huge, because like there was a law that was passed that made every retiring soldier, a military person, a veteran, so they're entitled to all sorts of, you know. I'm not saying that, you know, those people who have risked their lives should not, you know, be recognized. But we also have to look at the fiscal limitations of government and at the same time the questions of equity, because everybody else would contribute to the GSIS, but do not get as high a pension benefit as those in the uniform sector. So eventually, that benefit will turn into a liability, which will become a crisis for which you will lose. You're seeing what's happening in Europe, that, you know, pension programs are being cancelled, or retirement ages are being increased to 70, you know, and because of fiscal problems. And this is something that if you are to be fiscally responsible, we have to deal with, and I hope that the military understands our concern about this, because it's a looming crisis. It's just 2 years from now, and we're going to face that.
Let me please open the questions to the floor. If you have any questions, please go up to a microphone. And while I'm looking at the floor, let me also just highlight some of the men who have fought corruption out there. I'm staring straight at him. Former Ombudsman Sonny Marcelo is here. I know I saw General Lim somewhere around in the back. I saw Colonel Rabusa, Simeon Marcelo, thank you. Retired General Dick Morales, ex-DND USEC, oh yes. Rodel Cruz, CHR Chair Eto Rosales is also here. And Danny Lim. These men and women who are working very, very hard to make things happen in a culture that is doing its best to fight back and drain you of your energy. So please don't let it drain you. Please, ma'am, you have a question. I'll come up to you with the mic. Okay. Eto Rosales.
Thank you, Maria. Well, it's not a question, it's probably a question also to Secretary Butchabad. And I'd like to, first of all, express my appreciation personally to General Oban for having allowed very graciously the opening of the martial law documents, the classification of the martial law documents. This morning I was up there with all the dust, leafing through, you know, the history of the communist movement, the history of media repression. I looked into all of that, the history of the legal framework of the martial law from Proclamation 1081 to LOI 1, you know how President Marcos, the late President Marcos was. He was so strong in his legal basis for his fascistic practices. And in that regard, he actually had it all. So to me, I want to say this because I think this is a very important project that it's the first time we're doing it, and maybe in Asia. And I want it to be something that is inclusive, to get everybody on board, and to ensure the integrity of the entire process. So, General Oban, of course, Defense Secretary Volz and I talked about this, but precisely it was through your gracious, you know, allowance that we were able to, are now starting the process of looking into sorting the martial law, the classified martial law documents, and in a long journey towards, you know, for public consumption, but it is a painful process of healing, in a very long journey where we hope to end impunity one day and make human rights a household word and a way of life for our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. If there are questions or comments from Manny, yes.
Good afternoon. I'm Manny Mugato from Reuters. Sir, I think the book is very timely because in August, the Department of National Defense issued its national security paper elevating corruption as a threat to national security. How justified is that move by the Defense Department to elevate corruption? Is it a realization that we really have a big problem in the military? Thank you.
Yes, probably. That's why. That's the reason why we are instituting reforms, and that's the reason why we're getting all basic documents for such an organization to function more efficiently and effectively. And that's also the main reason why we would like to institutionalize all this so that it will have a long-term impact for future leaders of the armed forces.
Follow up? Yes.
So how is it affecting our efforts to defeat our internal security threats? How is corruption becoming a very big impediment in achieving or in doing our jobs, our mission?
It's not impeding at all. It's not impeding at all. As I said in the book, I realized that the organization was wanting in reforms, and that made it much easier for leadership to institute such reforms. On top of that, we have a new security plan, and it's also an organization's desire to implement the objectives of this security plan. That's for a just and lasting peace for the entire country. It's not at all impeding our efforts towards our operational goals.
Maybe there's time for one or two more questions. In the back? Please approach the mic. No.
Sir, good afternoon. Bing Formento po, DCRH. You mentioned a while ago about the blueprint you are submitting to the President. Could you elaborate on that, sir, blueprint na sinasabi ninyo?
It's basically the, I was saying earlier, the projection of out of the prism, we out of the table of organization and equipment, we realized that there are a lot of things that we still have to do aside from financial and logistics reforms. We have to dig into personnel management, attrition system, career development of the uniformed personnel. We have to take a look again at training as it affects the personnel. We know what sort of personnel we need in the organization. So we have to realign all this. Of course, andyan pa rin yung defense reform program. Ongoing yan. We'll just have to adjust accordingly based on the results of the review that we're doing.
Ano pong latest sa investigation pinagawa? Surprise investigation niyo dito sa AFP regarding the corruption?
I mean the audits.
The audits, yes.
We continue with the unannounced audits. So far, the feedback I'm getting is that we have some minor observations, principally on documentation, on and journal entries and all that, but nothing that borders on the expose that was that we had in the past.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, just the last, yes, please.
Good afternoon, sirs. I am Major General Sajarin, the chairman of the Bids and Awards Committee, Armed Forces. And when I greeted Brenda as I got in, I greeted her, Brenda, I think we're ready for the sequel to do. And I'm referring to the small wings that we are trying to do in the Armed Forces. The small wings, specifically Mr. Secretary, Congressman, we are ready to be more or less $1 billion worth of spare parts of Air Force spare parts, 45 flying wings of the Air Force. We have looked into the $1 billion requirement of the naval shipyard over a period of 5 years, which we can reduce because we order support. So the issue now is our facility will be ready this quarter. So let the Chief of Staff sign the notice of award to any winning bidder within this quarter. Of course, our apprehension is the GAA, and at the same time, will TBA be ready to release million amounts for this project? Thank you very much.
Secretary Abad or General Oman?
Yes, sir.
You know, the issue is not whether we are willing to release really, because we do have to release a lot. But I think the real, and you know, this is the non-sexy part of the work that has to be done. You know, for example, in the matter of putting together an integrated financial management system. You know, you have to do the accounts, the ledgers, and the manuals. You know, on a day-to-day. These are the things that really matter if you want to tighten internal control and you want to make sure that you can trace both the financial as well as the physical output of all the investments being made, and then subsequently determine whether in fact you achieve the outcome of the whole project or program that you're pursuing. This is something that does not exist. And this is something that we have to put in place, you know. And we're doing this really you're trying to do this very rigorously, and it's not easy, you know, because at the same time, you have to be able to do it in a way that, unlike, you know, what was in the past, the different units at the AFP were like separate silos. You know, they don't know what each one is doing. So it's really hard to determine whether, you know, things are moving according to the rules or the guidelines, you know. So at DBM, we want to make sure that we follow the rules, you know. We make sure that they are transparent. We make sure that eventually reports come. That's why, for example, we have the Philippine Government Electronic Procurement System that we have now put in place, so that all bid notices in this country are in fact accessible through our field JEPs, you know. And we have set up also what is called the e-tails project, where all the lump sum allocations in government, in fact, can be real-time monitored in the DBM website, you know. So in this way, technology is being harnessed to promote greater transparency and accountability. And so it's being set up. It's taking a little time because we're very careful, because we can in fact digitize but then make corruption very efficient. You know, so we have to reconfigure the place first, and then we put in the technology so that, you know, truly technology serves the need for transparency and accountability.
Yes, sure.
Sir, can I follow up on that? There is a lot of new technology out there now. In fact, MOVE is working on trying to crowdsource government. I mean, help for building institutions. I mean, how can you see the technology being used in some way that can help build our institutions?
Well, immensely. In fact, we, as I said, we have the Philippine Government Electronic Procurement System. So all bid notices are now sent through the field JEPs, and after the BACs, the Bids and Awards Committees, have chosen the rightful winner, that is also uploaded in the website. We also have pretty soon the government manpower inventory system. But the mother of all of this thing is really the government's integrated financial management system, where we will have a national payment portal, central payroll system, government manpower inventory system. And as soon as we can get everybody on board, and as I said, I'm very thankful to the AFP, the PNP, with certain pressure, the judiciary, because they've all submitted to us their rosters, and so now the next part of the program is to try to clean up and make sure that through coordination with the BIR and the civil service that the roster is really represents what's out there, and these are going to be updated real time. So in a way, in a big way, technology is going to help this whole process of ensuring transparency and accountability in government. But let me also say that the AFP has to begin to move in the direction of engaging the citizenry. We've tried doing this in the 6 biggest departments last year, and we're moving to do it with the 12 biggest next year. And it's not easy, but I think it's a very healthy exercise. It can be adversarial at the start because, social movements started out being very anti-government. But it's also a learning process for the civil society and the political movement, as well as the private sector. The recent effort of the business community to organize an integrity summit, and now they're doing codes so that suppliers and contractors sign up to their integrity packs, and which we will use then as one of the bases for looking at whether we engage this group of contractors who supplies. I think by doing that, you tighten the community who really want to see change in our society.
Yeah, I think we're yes.
May I just
Go ahead.
support what Secretary Abad said? I think you'll excuse us senior citizens if we ramble a bit. I'm already a senior citizen, so I'm a little bit excused. Defense and security policy cannot be made by one sector, not even the military sector. It should encompass the entire nation, and we should all participate in crafting the defense policy of a nation. Now, we are in a period of transformation. I think this is the transition caused by the exposés. Now we are in the period of transformation. I'm very glad that you mentioned the proposed bids that you're going to announce. I wish, and I think you will do it, if you can only make this an example, one of the most transparent bidding that we'll ever see. Put it on the internet. Everybody can see what you are bidding out and award it. Make a big thing out of it so that people's trust and confidence on the armed forces will be restored. Maybe it will start breaking up this stranglehold on the part of certain suppliers who have been monopolizing many of the contracts through the years. Suddenly, we will realize the game has changed and things are already opening up. If that can happen, this bidding of yours that you're mentioning, and we see it very open, we can see who we're bidding, how much, make it the most open thing. I think you will drop from being the most corrupt organization immediately down, and you will no longer be the valedictorian. Do not underestimate the power of being open and transparent.
Ma'am, in terms of engagement with the citizenry, yung produkto pong internal peace and security plan was a product of a multi-stakeholder engagement. Andyan po yung civil society groups, andyan po yung local government agencies, local government units, and various people organizations. we started it, sir, and we're going to similar direction in engaging the citizenry in practically coming up with defense and security policies.
I think that's a very good message. Now, corruption is a very well-entrenched problem. It's been there for the longest time, and corruption in the military is just a microcosm. And the message, I guess, that we're getting from our guests is that they cannot do it by themselves. Everybody has to get involved. And on that note, I'd like to invite Maria for maybe a brief wrap-up, and then we can proceed with our cocktails.
How to quickly wrap up our distinguished guests. Corruption is endemic. Glenda, Gemma's, and Aris's book focuses on one that was exposed by one of their own, one of the militaries. And it gives a very depressing picture. You got to read it, because then you really understand. You know, when I read it, I went to Glenda and I said, oh my God, does everyone know this? It shows how much work really does need to get done, and how it isn't something for a day or a news story or a soundbite or 9 months or perhaps even 6 years. The problem goes back decades and decades. From our panel, I was really looking for hope from them, because after I read it, I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And there was hope. First of all, fantastic hope that General Oban himself is confronting it directly. So top-down is pretty good, but top-down isn't enough if it doesn't have bottom-up as well. He talked about getting a TO. And actually, the book says that the military has never actually ever had a full TO. In our budgeting process, the first thing that needs to happen is to know exactly who you're budgeting for. So that's great. The PDR, that's actually something that also came out in the panel, that's incredibly important. Legislation, that perhaps that would be very helpful. Certainly civilian oversight. I liked Representative Abaya's comment about education. Get the book to the soldiers, because part of the reason and part of the ways corruption spreads is through ignorance. It's just the way it's been done, and if you stand up against the group, that it takes a lot of personal cost, not just for you, but you don't even know that you're corrupt because everyone else is doing it. So education becomes an important thing. In the end, we're ending it with, my lordy, we can't just point a finger because we are all in it together. If we do not reform, how can we expect to progress? So we are looking forward to the progress that the military will do. And Secretary Abad, we have our sneaking suspicion it's not just the military, that you have a lot of work to do, and that Congress itself, one of the other points the book makes is that when the groups that have oversight themselves don't exercise oversight. They have their own vested interests that they push forward. So again, all of these things. And we have former Secretary Mercado's example of never having to walk outside because a truck might lose its brakes. It takes courage to stand up against corruption. Please, let us do it, not just for the military today, but for our